Well, today at 1 o'clock Texas time is the full moon,
I thought it was 1:08.
total lunar eclipse at 1:08.
Lunar eclipse?
Well, that's a full moon,
Oh, okay.
just a regular old full moon.
At 1:08, which is auspicious. It's an
so-
auspicious number.
That being said, in our, it's common for Buddhist Tibetans to subscribe to the understanding that the full moon brings an energy that for some reason amplifies the impact on your consciousness of whatever practices you do. Positive impact of positive practices that you do. I can't say 100%. And I can definitely say that I have had particular things come up in the full moon, actually, and the moon that seem to confirm that for me. So Christopher thought he asked if I'd like to resume leading the opening prayers. And I was reminded of the first Buddhism teaching that I attended with Lama Basan. I guess would have been 2005. Not that long ago, really, 20 years. And in that first meeting, Lama Basan reminded us, or in this case, we were all new. And he said, when we take refuge, we're taking refuge in the three jewels: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And, in Tibetan, it's Sangye, Cha, and Gadun is Sangha in Tibetan. So what he pointed out was that the real refuge as a practitioner, the real refuge is the Dharma. And then he pointed out that in Tibet, the word Dharma, they use the word Cha for Dharma, which in Tibetan means transformation. So, in effect, and what he explicitly said was, so you are taking refuge in the potential you have to transform. So there's only one reason to attend these classes, and that is because you wish to undergo a transformation, your consciousness. If you are seeking to change the exterior world by attending these classes, you will not accomplish that. What you will transform is your understanding of the world you see, both as it appears to you and as more deeply as you come to understand what is it that you are seeing. What are you seeing? So we're taking refuge in our ability to transform, our potential to transform, the potential that every consciousness has to transform. Otherwise, there is no point to not attend these classes because you think it will make you feel better about the world out there. It will make you feel better about the world inside and how that codependent arising phenomenon called the world appears to you. We don't often talk about this in class, but our consciousness, it sounds like, some kind of crazy woo-woo thing to say that we create the world we see, but as we've talked about many, many times, the world that appears to us is nothing more than what our consciousness apprehends based on our propensities, which is huge. And our sense faculties, the sense faculties that we as human beings possess and the way that they work, we have those due to our propensities. So we have the gear we have because of our consciousness being habituated to a certain kind of gear, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, so forth. So that's what we're taking refuge in, and we're just going to contemplate in English the refuge of prayer and contemplate the reality of what it is that we are doing with regard to our confidence in this path. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha through the positive potential that I create by practicing generosity, ethics, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha through the positive potential that I create by practicing generosity and the other paramitas. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha through the positive potential that I create. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. The positive potential that I create. You're the boss, as Venerable Rabina says. And we don't often unpack the practice, by practicing generosity and the other perfections. So it is often said by practitioners who really have it going on that this refuge prayer is actually all you need. If you would practice, by the positive potential, so the merit that we create by practicing. And so then you have to go, okay, what am I practicing? Don't just zoom past the words. You're practicing generosity, or Christopher always likes to talk about, framing these things as the proactive. So you're giving. What are you giving your time? Probably in this day and age, probably mostly what you're giving is your time. Generosity, ethics, boils down to non-harm. Patience, which is about refraining from anger, stopping yourself from feeling and acting out of anger. That's what they're talking about with patience in this context of the six professions. Patience. Enthusiastic effort, which means never forgetting that you can transform. Don't ever fall back on the, oh, well, this is hard, I can't change. No. If you're going to bother to be a Buddhist, then you have to think of these things too. Enthusiastic effort is a requirement of this path. And then the things that in some ways, we think of the next two as Buddhism, concentration. So developing single-pointed concentration. And, you can use the activities of your everyday life to work on concentration. And then finally, the sixth of the six paramitas is wisdom. Wisdom, understanding how things really are, which is why we have class. And with that, Take it away, Christopher.
Right.
Ed McMahon used to tell jokes, but
Yeah, that's true. No, that's good. It's really great. Um, I thought I would just remind us last week what we were talking about was um, will the world have an end? And it revolved around a teaching that the Buddha was giving, and a question was raised, will the world have an end? And he didn't give an answer. And we discovered that there were 14 such questions that the Buddha did not give an answer to. And I thought I would, put a link to this in the study guide from last week, but I thought I will read it because um, Alexander Berzin has put it in a way that I hope will make sense to all of us. Buddha did not answer these questions because there is no such thing as a true, findably existent me or self for either limited beings, sentient beings, or for Buddhas. And no such thing as a true, findably existent universe. Therefore, there can be no question whether such things are eternal or not eternal, finite or infinite. It's like, and this is, if you recall, Kavita tried to give an example last week of this, and Alexander Berzin has nailed it, okay? Because he thought a lot about it. It's like asking, do rabbit horns, turtle hair, or chicken lips last forever or only a limited time? That's what those questions that were being asked to the Buddha were framing things is like, well, does an inherently existent self, is it eternal or is it, is it not eternal? And the question is framed completely wrong. It's like asking, well, will chicken lips exist eternally or for a limited time? Chicken lips don't exist at all. So this is why the Buddha knew if any answer that he would give, even though it may be a quote unquote correct answer, would be misinterpreted because the audience, the people who were receiving the teachings, had only the idea that things exist inherently, rather than things are very fluid, dependent arisings and are constantly changing. This is not the way, the Buddha could size up that particular audience and see if I answer in any way, it's going to be misunderstood. So I just thought I would remind us of what we talked about last week. This week, we're talking about what is the world? The first question was, will the world have an end? And of course, the Buddha didn't answer because the question was being, not framed properly from the minds of the questioners. So now we're going to talk about, well, what is the world?
according to you.
So from the perspective of ordinary human beings, the term world conventionally refers to the earth and all the people, places, and things on it. It encompasses everything that exists, including the physical universe and all forms of life. Again, from the perspective of ordinary humans, the world exists the way it appears to them and as they perceive it to be, a collection of objectively quantifiable and observable self-existent phenomena that can be seen, felt, and experienced. Now, would you agree that that is the way the world is conventionally seen to be by most ordinary people,
When we
beings?
use the word world, that's what we're conventional.
So we would not disagree with that. Right? We understand that. We understand what's being said here, right? Okay. Now, from the Buddhist perspective, there is no inherently fixed, objectively quantifiable, self-existent world that actually exists. The world that is experienced and observed is an appearance of consciousness. The world that is experienced and observed is an appearance of consciousness. One of the great treatises attributed to Maitreya Buddha via transmission to the 4th century Indian saint Asanga. If you recall, Asanga was the one that took the worms off the dog, and the dog all of a sudden appeared as Maitreya. Then he went running down in the village and said, I found Maitreya, and everybody just saw him running around like a crazy man, except one woman who saw him carrying a dog on his shoulders. So ordinary beings, it's very difficult for us to grasp this. Okay. So that treatise is entitled Discriminating Between the Middle and the Extremes. In chapter 1, stanza 4 of that treatise, it states, I'm going to read it without the inserted commentaries. I'm just going to read it, the initial thing, and you will see it's like code again, okay? It states in chapter 1, stanza 4, the environment, sentient beings, the self-existent entity, and cognition, all these appearances of mental consciousness strongly grow. These do not exist. Because the object does not exist, the subject also does not exist. So here the same thing is with commentaries of Lama Yeshe inserted. The environment, the sensory world of sentient beings, the self-existent entity of both persons and phenomena, and cognition, the mental process of knowing in general. All these appearances of mental consciousness strongly grow from the repeated imprints on the mental continuum of irrational beliefs that are maintained by ignorance. These appearances do not exist in the way they are perceived. Therefore, because the object does not exist as it appears, the subject perceiving the object also does not exist as it appears. So let's break that down a little more, because still, you go, could you repeat that? What is he saying? So the environment, that's referring to the world. The world that we appear, if you look up one of the definitions of world, I think just a standard definition, it is the environment of what exists around us. So the environment that appears to us, all the sentient beings, and this idea that all selves, and all phenomena have a self-existent entity. And that's the way it appears to us. It appears as if every single thing, including the persons and all the objects, have a kind of self-existent identity of their own. They're kind of encased in their own identity. This is how it appears to us. The mental process of knowing in general, our mental process of knowing in general, is also part of this. All of these appearances of our mental consciousness. So as we've discussed before, we have the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, discrimination, what do they call it? Mental formations, or compositional factors, or conditioning. I like that one, conditioning. And then consciousness. All of those things, those first 4 aggregates, lead to a moment of consciousness. So all of these things that is running through our aggregates and our sense consciousness come to us as a imprint upon our mental continuum. And because we have a misunderstanding of nature of reality. In other words, the way it's put, from the repeated imprints on the mental continuum of irrational beliefs that are maintained by ignorance. The actual word Lama Yeshe uses is superstition. And if you look up the word superstition, it means an irrational belief that is maintained by ignorance, not actually knowing reality. So when we're superstitious about things, we can get very afraid and frightened, and we act in really funny ways. And it comes from having a wrong or a mistaken view. So this mistaken view is imprinting continually our mental consciousness, our mental continuum. And these imprints keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger the more we believe in them. And this is the problem now, why the world appears the way it does to us, with all the things that are going on in the world. It is basically an appearance of our consciousness. So the thing we need to be doing is looking at our consciousness and kind of cleaning that up so that the appearances, the imprints on our mental continuum are going to be in line with not superstitious beliefs, but in line with reality, the way things actually are, not the way we think they are. It's really, really pretty deep, this just first stanza. Okay, so it says, therefore, because the object does not exist as it appears, so also the subject does not exist as it appears, because subject and object are connected, as we know. So if the world, to us, to our mental continuum, to our misunderstanding of reality, if everything has appeared now as if it's separate, distinct from one another, then we also see the subject, we might say us, as being separate and distinct from everything else as well. So this is what it's saying here. Through a mistaken and continually mistaken imprints on our mental continuum, the view that we have of the world is mistaken. But we don't, because we're immersed in it, we don't see it, which is why we need an enlightened mind, such as the Buddha or these great teachers that we have, to sort of reach into our cloudy, confused world and help us clarify what is actually going on. What was that movie? What the bleep is going on? What's actually happening? So,
Along those lines, I think we need to be a lot more appreciative of the fact that our impression of what is bombarded by the external stimulus that we expose ourselves to. And so the more serious you get about your practice, I'm just going to say this in a generic sense, the more serious you get about transforming, the more serious you get about proving through your own practice, the less you will allow yourself to be brainwashed by the external stimulus. Remember that no matter how real and definite and important it seems that all that exterior stuff that's going on, it's merely a transitory phenomenon that is co-created in the transitory way by afflicted consciousnesses, barfing it out there for you to. So this is
Very descriptive.
yeah, I like the barfing
so
it out.
don't think that you're somehow immune. If you find yourself triggered, just know that you're brainwashed. I mean, I don't know what other word to use, We
Right.
are brainwashed because our senses work a certain way and
Right.
our society that we find ourselves. Imagine if we lived in Bhutan where everybody's happy and they all practice Buddhism and it's a very isolated relatively isolated and,
Mm.
we would not be having the same conversations.
The point is that we can transform. That's the point of Buddhism. Um, this, what they call Buddha's nature, is our capacity to transform from where we are now all the way to a fully enlightened being for the benefit of all other sentient beings. So I want to now read you what this is, an excerpt by Lama Yeshe in 1976, from December 15th to January 2nd in Kopan, Nepal. Lama Yeshe taught on the first chapter of Maitreya's discriminating between the middle and the extremes. The following is an excerpt from that teaching. So the first thing he says, each time we have delusion, our appearances become thicker and thicker. So before I go further, I want to define delusion. Delusion is defined as a false or misleading belief that persists despite evidence to the contrary. That's from the dictionary. Delusion is defined as a false or misleading belief that persists despite evidence to the contrary. So there is evidence that everything exists in a interdependent way, that everything is dependently co-arises. There is that evidence, but we don't see it. So what's happening with our mental continuum is that we're just imprinting delusions, false, misleading beliefs that are not based on fact. We have, if we can understand that and not feel bad about it, but feel like, wow, I need to look into what actually the truth is, and then I can change. I will begin to change these imprints that I'm making on my continuum. So here, Lama Yeshe is referring to the false and misleading belief that self and phenomena exist inherently, that they sort of have their own fixed self-existence, despite evidence to the contrary. Despite evidence to the contrary. That's still our default. So this is what meditation is all about. Meditation means thinking, analyzing, listening to these teachings and then actually thinking about them for ourselves. What does it say? How do I incorporate this into the way I actually think, speak, and behave? Most important, the way I think. Most important. So here's what I'll continue now, because I just wanted to define delusion there. Each time we have delusion, our appearances become thicker and thicker. For example, our memories of our home or the neighborhood supermarket will frequently come into our minds. These memories come from imprints that have been placed on our consciousness and remain there continuously. When we sit down and try to meditate on a subject again and again, these memories come up again and again. We don't want them, but we can't stop them. Intellectual understanding isn't enough. We need method and wisdom. We start with our intellectual understanding. Then we practice contemplation, from which experience comes. Roughly speaking, we talk about two types of sense objects: inert material forms and sentient beings, beings with a mind. So I think we can all see that. I think we can all agree with that. In general, roughly speaking, we talk about two types of sense objects, objects of the senses: inert material forms and sentient beings, beings with mind. These objects in the external sense world appear to our consciousness. But the appearances of these things don't exist in the way they are perceived. The various appearances of the material world, sentient beings, the self-existent I, all of our sense perceptions, all these appearing things do not exist in the way we perceive them. We can say this in another way. That is, the entire sense world does not exist as perceived because we only perceive our limited dualistic view. This is especially true with regard to our perceptions of the ego, I am, and each other. Nevertheless, our deluded perceiving consciousness continues to grow because the imprints of dualistic appearance are repeated billions of times. For example, when we see the color white, that object, white, of our sense consciousness is manifested from our consciousness. The imprint is manifested from our consciousness into a color, which then appears to us. Let me read that again. Our deluded perceiving consciousness continues to grow because the imprints of dualistic appearance are repeated billions of times. For example, when we see the color white, the object of our sense consciousness, white, is manifested from our consciousness. The imprint is manifested from our consciousness into a color, which then appears to us. There's no color white sitting there waiting for us to perceive it. When our consciousness looks at the environment comes into existence. Now, I know this sounds like woo-woo, weird, crazy, and that's because we are immersed in our particular set of aggregates. And that's all we are experiencing right now. But we've talked about this a lot in terms of different species with different sets of aggregates, and they're experiencing what we would all call the world, but in some cases, completely different ways. Completely different ways. This is science. We know this. And yet we still think, oh, the world that I see is the world that exists. We still think that it is quantifiably verifiable out there, that we can measure it. We are only measuring via our particular set of aggregates. All we really have is an experience. We're simply experiencing the same way a fly is simply experiencing. The appearance is appearing to the consciousness as experience. This is so huge and so deep. It's amazing that we're even talking about it, but we are talking about it, and it's coming up because of Nagarjuna's text. So, any discussion about this? Any observations, comments, questions, feelings? Please.
Yeah, there's just something on my mind about this. It seems like, as I look out into the world, this is, I seem to feel that somewhere out there in the world is what we would call, roughly speaking, an evil force that wants humans to get imprinted with chaos, anger, and hatred. And so this evil force that I imagine is out there creates all the news headlines that we think we know are true. We think we read the news and that we're somehow getting some, I don't know, from its own side account of some factual, from its own side sequence of events. When, I mean, we know logically that all that we're getting, all the things on the opinions about what's happening, where we're getting from highly subjective streams of information. And so, I mean, I look at all that and I think, what evil is behind this?
All right, all right.
So that's the way it's happening for me. My environment has.
Let's talk about
That
that.
includes some exterior.
Let's talk about that. So if we,
boogeyman.
the Buddhism says that what we are experiencing is called samsara, cyclic existence. There is cyclic existence is like a trap that a consciousness gets caught up in. And that trap, you could say, is, if you wanted to say the origins of that trap of samsara, is a mistaken belief that there is an inherently existing me and mine, that I exist inherently as a fixed being. There's something unchangeable about me that will always be me. So what comes out of that, why samsara arises from this, is that the me is constantly, all right, consciousnesses are interconnected and interdependent. Yet this idea of a self-existent me does not fit in with that model. It doesn't. It doesn't fit in with the model, and therefore it's pushing against the actual nature of reality, which is that everything is non-dualistic, everything is dependently co-arising, everything is interdependent and interconnected. But because of this belief in an inherently existing me and mine, that flies in the face of reality. Suffering is experienced, what we would call suffering, because it's going against the flow of what actually is. So when we're talking about what we would say evil beings who are trying to, basically control us, well, why? Why would a being who believed they inherently existed want to control everything? That's the question. Why would somebody go to those means to control and have the power over others? The answer is simple. Can anybody think of that?
I'm just assuming that they have the habit of being in control and don't want to lose control.
The reason we would want to have control over others is we don't believe that we are interconnected, that we are interdependent, that we have to somehow lord over them and control them, even make them our slaves so they will do what I want, what me wants. This is not just evildoers in the news. Happens in families. It happens everywhere in relationships. The answer is simple, but we don't see it.
I think one of the reason that it's on my mind, especially right now, is this issue of we've been talking about the mental health issues within the academic world, but it's everywhere. But things are getting talked about and presented in such a inflammatory way now,
Right.
that you can't even stop to investigate what's the underpinnings of issues anymore.
I've said this many times. If you're trying to control others, and if you're especially trying to control large groups of others, the oldest method in the book is called divide and then conquer. Because if you can if you can have everybody fighting against one another in camps, and you're the one who set up the whole divisiveness, then you can control them. You can control them by what you are telling them. From my point of view, that is precisely what is going on. And it's because of ego self-grasping and attachment to an inherently existing me and mine that flies in the face of reality, which is non-dual, interconnected, interdependent, dependently co-arising. So this is samsara. This is what Buddha said, sort of a wheel off balance. The axis is off balance, and so it's like floppy, and it's a bumpy ride, and it's not working smoothly the way it otherwise would. Yeah.
I think this is more our intellect and our mind conflicting on the reality, which is the ongoing fight we just talked about. So I guess it's a progress of the wisdom and practice that will lead you to understand what it really is. But at the present, I think it's our intellect and our mind, all the aggregates functioning every day from the external factors influencing us and our decision. I think that's what the problem is, but I guess the practice and more wisdom and more teachings, listening, whatever we do would lead us to clarity more and more and more until when, I don't know. I think that is how I believe my practice to move forward. But there's a lot of questions like Ovida said and all that. But I guess it's mostly towards our intellect, mind. It's the mind and intellect is the biggest culprit.
The mind, yeah, right. It's what we're doing with the mind. According to Buddhism, the bodies that we have, the aggregates that we have developed, that came about due to this self-grasping.
Yeah.
The reason we appear separate and
Right.
individualized from one another in that way is because of this belief that we have that we do exist that way.
The self-identification.
Yeah, so we've developed these bodies with these kinds of aggregates, which will play back to us an appearance that looks like everything is separate. Everything is not interconnected.
Yeah, we're creating a wall of separation between you and the other side,
Mhm.
and then we're always fighting on that.
Right.
That's what it is, that the self-grasping I, me, creating the wall of separation.
And the I and me creates the wall of separation between itself and everything
Yes.
else.
Yeah, and that's a natural phenomena because we have intellect, we have mind. I
Right.
mean, that's how we are. We're a being. We
Right.
cannot deny that. But there is a way out, I think, the liberation, which is this very practice.
This path,
and
right.
Everything, clear things. I mean, it has been done from centuries. People have attended liberation, so it's possible. But our intellect, our mind, our obscured vision and aggregates, everything is creating this wall of separation.
Right.
Like Covida, she said, enemy, who's this enemy and all that. I think that's within us. We are creating that enemy to ourselves because of the wall of separation.
Right.
I mean, no, that's exactly right. It's like what?
And that's you.
Yeah.
That's that. I'm thinking, where can you find the answer? I think the answer will come within sometime.
Of course, yeah.
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 There's no enemy out there doing something to you.
It's all an
No.
appearance of our consciousness.
All in you.
But depending on the culture you grew up in, when you do say evil, that's a palpable thing. There are people that can identify with that because it comes from a creator, God. It comes, then God knows you, and that solidifies something right there. So depending on what culture you grow up in, there's a degree of difficulty in reaching equanimity.
Hey, Arthur,
And anyway,
Arthur,
like
are you awake?
where you grow up?
Yes.
You look a little bit like you're having trouble
Right,
staying
wasn't
awake at
as
the wheel.
difficult, and then maybe when you became more Western,
We either have one conversation
Sorry,
or not.
it seemed like an
No.
emergency.
He was smiling.
Yes, you didn't look.
He
Yes,
is he moving or is he parked?
I'm just saying, he's okay.
He's okay.
Something about it looked like you were just not there.
Kavita was worried about you, Arthur. That's all. I want to go back to this idea of this problem of mental health now. And why is there this problem of, this mental health issue? Well, it comes directly from this idea. If we actually believe we are walled off and separate from everything else, then that's very isolated, that's very lonely. If what we are taking into our mind reinforces that it's a bad world out there, it's difficult out there, you don't have a lot of friends out there, you can't trust what's going on out there. Of course, this is all coming from our own consciousness. However, the very strong appearance and belief that we have is that we are isolated, separated off, cut off from everything. And that leads to mental health problems, leads to depression, leads to isolation, leads to aberrant behavior. So you can see all of the problems that we have come down to this one issue of a mistaken view of who we actually are and what the nature of who we actually are and the world is. So these are this importance of these wisdom teachings.
It's a mistaken view.
It's mistaken.
Ourselves.
Mhm.
That's the main problem.
But that view is so convincing, so real to us that it takes a Buddha to cut through, and it also takes our willingness, our final. I don't know what it is. Almost takes being fed up with suffering. I'm tired of it. There's got to be a better way, right? Isn't there a better way? And I think if we begin to engage in these very basic preliminary practices of Buddhism, which have to do with ethics, and we really practice that, we're going to see it. We're going to begin to see a change.
I think it's in the beginning, like you mentioned, faith has a big factor in it. To trust and have a faith, which is genuine, true faith, which is another difficult subject to have.
It's as Geshe Dragma once said to me, it's faith based on you've heard these teachings, you've tried them out, you are developing confidence in it. You can see something is working here. There is something that's actually valid about this. So that then you develop confidence. Confidence really means with faith, having faith. So you develop confidence in these teachings, and you develop confidence in the authentic lineage of these teachings, not just somebody who's out there saying, I'm some new age thing. It's sort of like Buddhism, but let me tell you what's really going on. I mean, we have to stick and stay with the lineage and the teachings as they were presented by the Buddha, and then these great masters, from one to the next, teacher to student, teacher to disciple. And then I think we really can develop confidence in it. Because some of the practices go to incredibly deep levels of experience and transformation. And that is what we're looking for. Positive transformation. Deep positive transformation.
When Kobita was talking about, there's an evil theme going out there, right? So, when we hear about the news and everything, and I'm thinking, Ajay was saying that why, people are so evil and doing this, like our politics, right? And then, as I was taught by my parents, they would always say, when you see these evil people, be compassionate toward them.
Mhm.
This is all they have known. This is all they know. They are so ignorant, right? And then the fact that why is it happening to us? Maybe it's our collective karma that we have a leader like that
Mhm.
because of our samsara collective karma,
Yeah.
right? So
Because we're in it. It's not
exactly.
happening to it. We're in it.
We are also going through it, right?
You know.
But we have a choice to not like blame them, but be compassionate towards them,
Exactly.
right?
That
Which is
is
counter to
exactly
what we hear
exactly.
culturally here.
such an important point. That is huge because, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because the way we fight this, these imprints that we are having in us. So we're getting all this garbage coming from, news and stuff like that. We're taking it in, we are believing it as if it's true, and it's not. And so then what we're doing is we're getting very, very angry at the ones we're being told to get angry at. We're just following like sheep. And what we need to do is, instead of that, because that's poison to our system, it's poison to our mental continuum. It's not doing us any good at all. We have to recognize this. It's not doing us any good to be angry. What we need to do is turn it around and have compassion. Compassion for what we think is the worst, most horrible person, right? Develop that compassion, understanding that we are all in the same predicament. And it's arising from the same mistaken view. And how can I be of help? At least not add to it with garbage, anger.
I mean, that's the
You know.
irony, right?
Yeah. It's
Oh, how dare they do this or that? I mean,
I know,
all we're
and-
doing is adding more fuel
Exactly.
to
what we're doing is
But thank you,
continuing
that
to
reminds
poison
me
our
of
mental
what I'm
continuum.
supposed to be doing.
I think
Exactly.
the true compassion actually empowers you. That's what it is. The true compassion, you react instead of retaliation, you have a compassion. I think the benefactor is you benefit by having this sense of empowerment. You feel, I mean, good is kind of selfish word, but you feel
Yeah.
very, compassion. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not
You're
like
not
I'm
aggregated.
feeling good by helping
Yeah,
others.
right.
It's not that. It's like understanding their pain, taking their pain. So I think it empowers you
Mhm.
to react with compassion,
Which
which
is
is
the
the
basic of
key.
Buddhism.
You know, what might be
Yeah.
a good sort of mental trick for me is to imagine that I'm on a field trip to an insane asylum, and to, when all the crazy shit, what I'm observing, just, to be like I would be if I was visiting an insane asylum when they used to exist. I did. I remember going on a field trip in high school, and
Yeah.
they used to call them insane asylums, and there were insane people, and
Right.
I did too. I went on a field trip.
and so you didn't go, oh my God, how dare they be crazy?
Exactly.
Yeah. The thing that I would add that Buddhism stresses is that compassion is wonderful, but compassion without wisdom to balance it is not stable.
Right.
And when something flies in your face, and something that has to do with you personally, or something that you would say is yours personally, without wisdom, compassion goes out the window.
Right.
So in order for our compassion, which is hugely important because it's related to love and connectedness, in order for that compassion to be stable, we must understand these wisdom teachings. The wisdom teachings will make the compassion bloom
Yeah.
in a very, very positive and beneficial way, rather than a way that, just makes us sad, and feel bad.
You mentioned the mental health issue and all of that these days. I think the root should be compassion on all the techniques and teachings they do, because without love and compassion, no matter what tricks you do, it's not going to last. Because bottom, when you look at everything, me, my, separation and all that, it's all because of lack of compassion. So I think the mental health, which is a big issue these days, I hope they put the compassion and love as the basic root and then develop from that. I think. Because
the
otherwise,
thing is,
the
if you're not
point's not
smart, you're gonna do something dumb,
Right. So
bluntly said.
yeah.
Okay, let's say let's say I run a business, and somebody comes to me and says, I can't stand to be around gay people, so you have to make a separate break room for the gay people so I don't have to look at them. And then you get into all these policies
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
feed into the problem in the first place.
Yes.
Because you're being compassionate, when in fact all you're doing is highlighting the differences. So rather than having a direct, we just do dumb stuff.
Yeah. So
Rather than like saying, like, exploring. Yeah, we just do dumb stuff.
yes.
We do.
So that's the wisdom.
Because we live
But the
upside
wisdom
down again.
aspect of this.
Yes.
I mean, how many college and how many universities, schools, how much of this shit is going on right now that you can see it? So It's almost like all of our social service programs have created a more fragmented, isolated
Exactly.
compartments in our society trying to be compassionate.
And
And
the
Mara
other
samsara, there
example
goes
is
the
the
Yeah.
samsara,
Jewish thing.
that's the reality of
Exactly.
what
You know,
present world is.
I mean, I think it's really hilarious right now that on some campuses they have places where blacks only because the blacks don't feel good around the white. So the white.
in some ways, you can't
like-
blame someone because.
So now,
it's
if
like,
you're
I
white,
don't
you can't go there. You're attacked. So I mean, so the whole thing is just being.
It's kind of insane,
It is
actually.
insane.
You know,
That's why I'm saying it's like we've got
So
to
that
the
is
insane
samsara.
asylum, and that's the
Yeah.
way to look
It-
at.
that's samsara, insane.
The
And-
rules and everything just makes you restricted.
Mhm.
But I guess we're in samsara. We have
Yeah,
accept that.
yeah.
We have to accept that.
Yeah, we do. We just need to be careful when we use the word compassion. We need to be careful that we know what we're actually saying.
As Buddhists, we want to balance that compassion
Balance.
with wisdom.
It's not just about being nice.
Exactly.
No, not just being nice.
Sometimes it does mean
It's
it's
tough love. Sometimes
Time out.
the most compassionate thing looks very rough.
Okay, so let's move on now to, we continue now with Nagarjuna's text. And next week, we'll be talking again about a third thing about the world, and that is, what is world peace?
What?
Because what is world peace? Because this is the Tibetan Buddhism Center for World Peace. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Okay, so we'll talk about that next week. All right, how the Buddha taught the profound meaning of emptiness. So these are the wisdom teachings which we need to balance and stabilize our compassion. Compassion actually is something that is almost innate in everyone. We want to feel that. This is why we want to get together with somebody. We want to have a family. We want to have all these things. And then we see it all goes awry. It's because we don't understand how to make that compassion stable. And it bites us in the butt. And then we become isolated and separated and angry and blah, blah, blah. So these wisdom teachings are super important, even though they are difficult. Of course they're difficult. So this is stanza 75. Thus, the doctrine of definite goodness was taught by the perfect Buddhas, the seers of reality, as profound, inapprehensible, and baseless. So the doctrine of definite goodness that's being referred to in the stanza is nirvana, which means cessation. It means it's referring to the emptiness of a mind that is free of delusional afflictions and the karma polluted by those delusions that causes rebirth. So nirvana means you're free of delusional afflictions. Therefore, you're free of the destructive karma that causes rebirth in this cyclic existence, which is delusional. It's delusional. We're mistaken. We are like coming out of a dream. It's sort of like the way they say when you're, getting to the clarity of the mind. It's sort of like removing layers of clouds and fog. It's what we're doing. We're trying to remove the fog of our misunderstanding to get the clarity of what reality actually is. How can we be loving and compassionate and wise at the same time and be of benefit and be happy and help others to be happy? That is Buddhism. That's what it's about. So we need these wisdom teachings. The doctrine of definite goodness is also profound. It's profound because it's difficult to realize. And it's difficult to realize because we are immersed in the delusion. The delusion is so real to us, it's very difficult for us to shake it off. Our habituation to a self-existent me and mine and everything else is so strong, and we are so immersed in it, it becomes very difficult to understand what's being said in these wisdom teachings, because it is in direct contradiction to that immersive delusion. It is inapprehensible, emptiness is inapprehensible in that it cannot be established, apprehended, or grasped as either of the two extremes of permanence and nihilism. So what happens to a lot of people with when we're talking about mental health issues, they believe things should be a certain way. It has to be this way. It has to be. So this is what absolutism or permanence is referring to in Buddhism. It has different definitions in different schools of psychology, but in Buddhism, absolutism, permanence is talking about things must be this way and they must always be this way. And nihilism is when it's you're not experiencing it that way, and then you just go, oh, nothing matters, and you're going to sink into a deep depression or kill yourself thinking that's going to solve it. And this happens all the time. That's nihilism. And Buddhism says it's very, very dangerous. We cannot allow ourselves to go to nihilism. We have to be kinder to ourselves. We have to realize we can go beyond this idea of absolutism or nihilism, these two extremes, and find there's a middle way here. And this is what the Buddha is talking about, this middle way between these extremes. So you can. This is the challenge we have in our society, is to find this middle way between these extremes. This profound emptiness is also baseless because it is without a foundation of inherent existence. Meaning there is no line of reasoning that can establish emptiness as having an inherently fixed existence. So emptiness itself is baseless. So emptiness, this doctrine, is profound, it's inapprehensible, and it's baseless. The Buddha taught that by realizing and meditating on emptiness, we can attain the results of the three vehicles. Now, we've talked about the three vehicles before, but I'll briefly go over them. There is what is called the Shravaka vehicle. It means a hearer, somebody who hears the teachings of the Buddha, and then that puts them on the path. Shravaka hearer. They listen to the teachings. Then there is the Pratyeka Buddha, which means solitary realizer. Pratyeka, solitary Buddha realizer. And so that's someone who all on their own achieves this path and achieves a realization of emptiness. Then there is the third vehicle is the Bodhisattva, which is the vehicle of a being who is wanting to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it's an awakened heart, an awakened mind, and it's the path of that for the benefit of all sentient beings. That's the Bodhisattva vehicle. There also are three ways of looking at this from so that's the I believe that's the Mahayana tradition. In the Vajrayana or Tantric tradition of Buddhism, there are also three vehicles. And that's the Hinayana. Yana means vehicle. Hinayana, which is the basic path. And we all need Hinayana. All of our teachers have said it's a mistake to think that you can bypass Hinayana. Hinayana is essential. That path is part of actually the Mahayana when you take on the Mahayana path. It's essential. It is not to be looked down upon at all. So there's the Hinayana. Then there is the Mahayana, which is the vehicle that's going to take you, it's the Bodhisattva vehicle. And then there is the Tantrayana or Vajrayana, which is called the diamond vehicle. And this is where you, with a teacher, you get empowerments for teachers such as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and you engage in practices that are that are working directly with your mind and the energies, your cell energies, and these are, and it is for those. It's not for everybody, and it is a way of, if you have the right kind of disposition, they say it is a way of speeding up the path to enlightenment, but it should not be engaged in
They say
lightly.
the prerequisite is a realization of emptiness and the development of authentic bodhicitta, along with actual authentic renunciation.
Right.
So those are the prerequisites.
Prerequisites.
And
At
if
least
don't
you have to. At least you have to have,
renunciation, bodhicitta means to-
if not a realization of bodhicitta, you need to have a very clear understanding and feeling for what it is.
You want to.
I mean, you really want.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. But so when he's talking about three vehicles, you're talking about hero vehicles, solitary realizer, or bodhisattva, or you're talking about Hinayana, Mahayana, or Vajrayana. I just didn't want to go by that and say three vehicles and everybody go, huh? Well, three vehicles. In short, the profound emptiness isn't established as either of the two extremes of absolutism or permanence and nihilism, and it can't be apprehended in either of those two extreme ways. Emptiness also does not have a foundation or reason for being inherently existent. There is, I mean, emptiness is it's the emptiness of inherent existence. Okay, the mistake of fearing emptiness. This is the next stanza. And this is stanza 76. Frightened by this baseless doctrine, frightened by emptiness that has no, solid base, and delighting in a base, sentient beings like to have something solid to hang on to, not passing beyond existence and non-existence. This is emptiness. It doesn't pass beyond existence or non-existence. Unintelligent beings ruin themselves because they're frightened by this. Again, the baseless doctrine being referred to here in stanza 76 is emptiness. Emptiness is a baseless doctrine in that true existence, in other words, inherently fixed, independent self-existence, is empty of having any basis in reality, and therefore doesn't exist at all. I'm going to say that again. Inherently fixed, independent self-existence is empty of having any basis in reality, and therefore doesn't exist at all. And the shorthand they use for that is they use true existence, which I initially found extremely confusing because I thought that meant, this is the truth. This is the truth. Let me listen. And they were saying, it's wrong. It doesn't exist at all. So what are we talking about? What are we talking about? So you just need to understand when they say true existence, they're saying, we think that this truly exists the way it appears and feels and looks. And it doesn't. None of this does. So we're grasping onto a true existence of separate, individual, self-existent things. And that's not the way things exist. Since, you see, the ignorant, ego, self-grasping mind grasps at the true existence of self and phenomena through the constraints of conceptual labels and dualistic thinking. Again, we're talking about this dualism problem. And what we're trying to achieve in Buddhism is non-dualism. The non-dualism of self and other, the non-dualism of conventional reality and ultimate reality. Since there isn't a truly independent, self-existent object, thought, or experience that actually exists independently, grasping at inherent existence is baseless and has no foundation in reality. That again goes back to why samsara is such a problem. We are pushing against the nature of reality. And of course, we're going to bump into all sorts of problems doing that. Only a Buddha, our ego self-grasping mind, which ignorantly delights in the fundamentally faulty conception of an inherently existing me and mine, becomes frightened upon hearing there is no such thing as a truly existent me and mine. This fear arises due to the ego's strong grasping at the self as being an independent, self-sufficient, truly existent entity, and the buildup of imprints this grasping has had on our mind streams since beginningless time. Most of us have very few imprints for understanding selflessness. So what we're doing now is we're generating imprints for understanding selflessness. And we need to continually generate these imprints that to the point where it begins to click. It begins to actually make sense to us. We see the logic in it instead of the logic in what we've been so accustomed to. Oh, everything exists the way it appears. Only a Buddha is completely free of the imprints of true grasping on the mental continuum. Among the rest of us ordinary beings, there are differences in the strength of the true grasping imprints each of us have. So we'll have different kinds of self-grasping imprints that are stronger than somebody else might have, and somebody else might have a different kind of self-grasping imprint which is stronger for them. And it all has to do with our individual mental continuum and our experiences. We also differ in the strength of the imprints we have for understanding selflessness, as well as the amount of merit or positive momentum we have gathered through our lifetimes that is continuing in our mental continuum. So we're all at kind of different places. I think, among us here in this group, in this room, in Zoom, there is, you can tell we wouldn't even be attracted to this if we didn't have some kind of similarity going on here. We wouldn't even be here. When we understand this, we realize how important it is for us to listen to teachings on emptiness and to study, contemplate, and familiarize ourselves with an accurate view of emptiness as much as we can. I want to stress that the word familiarize is the word for meditation in Tibetan, to familiarize yourself with something. So that's what we're doing with meditation, is we're familiarizing ourselves, habitually familiarizing with the meaning, the experience. Meditation is not, it's not just simply sitting in a particular posture and watching your breath. It requires thinking. It requires contemplation. It's very, very important, but we have to understand what it is. So we familiarize ourselves with an accurate view of emptiness as much as we can. This will have a powerful effect on our ability to understand and realize emptiness in this and future lives. People can wander off the path in many different ways. There are some who aren't interested in learning about emptiness. They never listen to teachings or carefully consider the meaning of emptiness. They are psychologically and physiologically habituated to grasping at the inherent existence of self and phenomena, and thus ignorance lives happily in them. As a result, they continually cycle within the suffering of samsara and cling to it. Beings who lack wisdom grasp phenomena as truly existent and think that if phenomena don't truly exist, then phenomena don't exist at all. When they hear about emptiness, it seems to them as if the Buddha is saying that nothing exists, or that karma and its effects don't exist, and the world which appears to them is just an illusion. You'll hear many people say this. Oh, it's just all an illusion. It doesn't matter, it's an illusion. So this makes no sense to them, and they continue to grasp at inherent existence. Others abandon emptiness, saying it's nonsense, it's absurd. These people ruin themselves. That goes back to the stanza saying that we ruin ourselves. These people ruin themselves in that they don't even make an effort to learn, contemplate, or familiarize themselves with the correct view of emptiness. Like the people who are uninterested in emptiness, they too will continue to cycle in samsara without end. Still, other people reject emptiness and fall into the extreme of nihilism, abandoning karma and its effects. They think they have no future lives and that their actions have no ethical consequences. As a result, they engage in many destructive actions and experience lower realms of existence.
Now, would that tie up to a suffering they face, the karma they build by that vision?
Oh, yeah.
And one or the other time, sooner or later, they will have to turn into path.
The suffering will be so great, it will cause them to go.
Suffering is the side effect of your decisions, your delusions. And I think one or the other time, we're all bound to go looking for truth.
Right.
Sooner or later,
If
this
they're
is our
fortunate.
time. Maybe they'll do it in next life or whatever, But
Yeah.
the side effect is the suffering you have to go through.
Right.
Period.
Right. I mean, what the Buddha's first teaching was there's suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I acknowledge this, there's suffering, and there's a way out of it. This is why I think when we're going back to Kavita's question about these evildoers out there and why, Dickie's saying it's so important to have compassion is that, they're suffering.
They are suffering.
They're not happy people.
I know.
And there's suffering going on. And really, if that's all we can do is just from a distance have compassion, that's fine. But I think, it's if we can have the wish that we can develop ourselves to the point where we could actually help them. Know exactly how to approach them or what to say that would turn them around and stop them from continuing on this path that's really only ends in suffering for themselves as well as others. Still, others misunderstand what emptiness means and think there is no existence and no non-existence. They are also led astray and experience lower realms of existence. So where we're at.
You want
Okay.
to find an example of that, maybe Tom is an example.
Tom? Is he really, you think?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So to say a little bit.
He thinks there's no existence and no non-existence?
Well, it's a bit circular because on the one hand, there's this existence in this path, and on the other hand, that's not the path that, as you were saying earlier about Buddhism, that people are generally following. They're supposed to follow, and they follow their own path, and it's all because of the devil. So the devil is forcing people to follow the wrong path, even if they know what the right path is.
And of course, we're concretizing the devil and
Yes.
saying it's
Yes. The devil's because they get to blame a lot of stuff on the devil in that particular philosophy.
Yeah. Again, I think that, the best response to anybody like that is just love and compassion. And when we can help, if we can help with something we say or do, and, just basically accepting them, really. I mean, that's the first step is just accept them for who they are and be compassionate. And I think that goes a long way in helping them.
You can be compassionate towards, sentient beings, but you don't have to agree or like the actions of that
Exactly.
sentient
Right,
being,
right.
but you can still be compassionate.
Right.
The problem is that, compassion and other things usually in our structure puts one in a sometimes in a disadvantageous position relative to the person who's you're giving your compassion to.
This is where the wisdom comes in. We have to know when to
Just
not
say
get
no.
ourselves in a situation like that.
Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah, of course it is. Oh, of course it is. Especially when you're talking about close relationships, family relationships, all that stuff that goes on. It's like a constellation of all these different energies, and how do you deal with this? Um, and all I can say is, I think the best thing for us to do is to continue on this path,
Like
because things
Buddha
will
said,
clear up.
Compassion is more like not even the word kind, right? It's tough to be a compassionate. In real, sometimes yeah, it's gonna be tough, but that doesn't mean you just be lovey-dovey and be kind, and
Right.
that leads to kind of hypocrisy too, So there comes the authenticity, and then I think to my exploration, real compassion is a strength that you have to find within you, and that strength will, bring the result to the other person, and could be tough.
Mhm.
But like I said, Brian and Kavita's point both goes into this, like it's tough, but I think the compassion is a strength that we have in ourselves that we need to practice, but it's not easy and it doesn't look nice all the time.
Right.
Because being kind and pity and all that, that's a natural human nature. I mean, you will help somebody who's in need of help, but to understand the real thing about him and have him feel powerful is, I think, what true compassion is.
Beautiful.
So that's the difference we have to learn first.
Mhm.
And second of all, yeah, it puts you into a lot of trouble, difficult situations, but the result is, I think, both empowering on both sides,
Mm.
me and the other side.
You will often see with pretty highly realized Buddhist teachers that they can be quite tough,
Yes.
quite stern, quite harsh, because they know that's what is needed. It's not just, like you say, it's not just lovey-dovey, be kind. And certainly having pity for someone doesn't help them. Being sad for someone doesn't help them. Compassion is not pity. It's not sadness. It's compassion is, I see you're suffering. How can I help?
Wishing well for the.
How can I help? And so that help can sometimes come in ways that don't look kind and lovey-dovey and nice. They can be quite harsh. I mean, and it's very good for us to have that experience ourselves, because then we understand it.
I think it's like building a compassionate muscle.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
One pound at a time.
And of course, the stability of it comes from under the wisdom teachings that go hand in hand with it. As they say, it's two wings of a bird. That bird can't fly with one wing. You have to have the wisdom and compassion together. So let's see where we're at. Okay, we're doing pretty good. All right. The fault of abandoning emptiness and denying dependent arising. This is stanza 77. Afraid of the fearless abode, which means emptiness is the fearless abode where you abide fearlessly. That's emptiness. Afraid of the fearless abode, ruined, they ruin others. Sentient beings, they're afraid of it, and they ruin others. O king, now he's talking directly to the king. First time. O king, act in such a way that the ruined do not ruin you. So here's a Kensur Tekchok's commentary. We usually think that a person who slaughters animals for a living creates negative karma. However, compared to giving up emptiness, being a butcher isn't so bad. When we abandon emptiness, we dim the light that dispels the darkness of ignorance in the mind streams of all sentient beings. When we abandon emptiness, we dim the light that dispels the darkness of ignorance in the mind streams of all sentient beings. We abandon the cause for attaining the enlightened state of complete Buddhahood. While a butcher kills a limited number of sentient beings, someone who abandons emptiness, and especially someone who teaches mistaken views to others, interferes with countless sentient beings being able to attain the immeasurable joy of liberation and enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. We should take care that we don't become such a person. Nagarjuna is directly addressing the king in stanza 77 when he says, "O king, act in such a way that the ruined do not ruin you." But what he is saying applies to each one of us. He advises us to make an exerted effort to understand that emptiness means dependent arising, and dependent arising means emptiness. If we understand this, we'll be able to posit without any contradiction that emptiness and dependent arising are different aspects of the same concept, even if they seem different at first glance. When we deny dependent arising, we also deny cause and effect. We deny the existence of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and so on. To avoid that, we need to understand how to posit dependent arising correctly. In addition, everything that is dependently arisen is empty of inherent existence. To understand that, we must learn how to posit emptiness correctly. If we mistakenly accept true inherent existence, there is no way for us to posit either dependent arising or emptiness. It is crucial for us to know how to posit the two truths, conventional truth and ultimate truth, as being complementary. They are one nature, but nominally different. Saying things are empty of inherent existence negates only a particular type of existence. Existence from its own side, objective existence, and so on. It does not negate all existence. Phenomena exist, but they exist as mere name, mere designation, and mere convention. When we think deeply and understand that all phenomena, anything included in the two truths, cannot possibly exist inherently, we may wonder, how do they exist then? If we're already familiar with the idea that phenomena, including the world, exist by mere name, mere convention, and mere designation by conception, that question won't arise. If it does, it is quickly resolved. Otherwise, we could easily think phenomena don't exist at all, even though we may not feel comfortable with the idea. For this reason, with great compassion, Nagarjuna has explained to us that although phenomena, including the world, don't inherently exist, they do exist as mere name, mere convention, and mere designation by conception. So we'll stop there. Any comments, really?
I'm still stuck on Buddha not answering the 14 questions.
Really?
Well, he says I can't answer it because it's not correct, you know, if I answer it, you get the wrong impression, but boy, he seems to go to great lengths to answer a lot of questions about stuff that you don't think is correct. Make sure we know it's not correct.
I think what is being pointed out is that it has to do with the audience, and apparently the particular audience and the way that audience was sized up by the Buddha was not going to be receptive to any of the answers that he would give because they were so locked into things actually existing. So what we're talking about is India in 3rd century, 4th century, something BCE. So at that time, in the Hindu view is of Atman, an inherently existing soul. And so that would go, anything the Buddha would say would go, they wouldn't hear it as anything but having to do with an inherently existing soul. It would be like saying that to somewhat religious people today who believe that I have a soul, and that soul is,
Eternal.
eternal. Right. It's an eternal thing that doesn't change, in other words. And when you have such a fixed belief that way, anything the Buddha would say would be misinterpreted to fit in with your own views. I've seen this with new students coming into when Geshe Dragpa was teaching. When we first had new students, one of the students, she was very much into New Age thought. And so everything that Geshe Dragpa was saying, she was transferring it into the New Age model and not actually hearing what he was saying. She was conflating it with the whole New Age woo-woo thing. And it took a long time, and I'm not sure she ever did get rid of it all, for her to sort of let that go and really see what is the Buddha saying. So we're talking about 14 instances where there was an audience where the Buddha saw this isn't going to work.
I mean, also, we don't know, we weren't there, but I think we've all experienced that in the not answering the question may be the most helpful thing in terms of forcing the questioner to think.
To think, yes.
So, I mean, I think it's probably
Right.
not just one of those zones, and since we're not Buddhists, what the hell do we know?
Right. I mean, I'm sure it would force.
But I think, in a way, Rob, your concern, Brian, is somewhat like you're still looking for the lips on a chicken.
No, I think.
Yes, you are looking for the lips.
I'm just saying, if I stand up before a bunch of Christians who believe in God as their creator, and that's the end all and be all, and I tell them about Buddhism, not asking them to accept it, I'm asking them to believe it, I'm just explaining there's another way to think about things. I'm imparting information, but the audience is completely unreceptive.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? I mean, their mind frame is the same as I'm not going to hear you in the way you would like me to hear you, but I am going to hear you. I just won't internalize it or think about it or whatever. But
Exactly.
it's like teaching students. I mean, I have a lot of students who don't think the facts I want to present to them are actually important to consider anymore. So they have a mindset that there is no truth anymore. And so, especially coming from now experts, they disavow it completely just because you are a expert these days. So I mean, to me, I don't see the.
See how smart Buddha
Great
was here we
difference.
are 3,000 years later, still thinking about why.
Eliminating it.
If you think about it, perhaps you'll come.
Turning it
Well,
upside down.
Well, even today, say even today, if you're explaining to a group who firmly believe in a inherently existing creator God, and you tell them about Buddhism, the Buddha, and all that, they're going to hear that and go, that is totally mistaken thinking. That is a false God, or something along those lines. So they are going to misinterpret what you say based on their particular framework.
And see, I think then the onus is upon me as a person delivering these new information or facts to present it in a way that allows them to maybe understand it. They may not believe it, and it may be very contrarian to their views and their practices and whatever. But I think then you have to, and maybe this is the wrong thing, but one of the things I did in my life is raise a lot of money for universities. And it took a special way to be able to talk to individuals who have a lot of net wealth, who may have very strange ideas about reality and whatnot, but to talk to them in a way that you could reach them at a level where they had some comfort or understanding, and you can get them to engage at least in a discussion and have a discussion, even though their belief was this way.
So basically, you are saying, I'm going to just cut to the chase,
Okay.
Ryan, and I really mean this sincerely. Right now, what you're basically saying is, Buddha was wrong.
No.
And
No.
you know better than Buddha.
No,
No,
That's it. It's just-
Kavita, let me,
You're saying,
Kavita.
if you were in Buddha's shape, this is what I would have done, and he must have been wrong, and why?
No,
Or you're saying, why did he do that? In which case, it's not a problem.
from my point of view, that's not what Brian is saying.
Okay. That's what I'm
like
hearing.
Tracy, what goes 0 to 100, all without going 34.
All right,
50.
so you said something very,
Good
to me, something that I immediately thought of when you mentioned this and you expressed it, that you can do this on an individual one-to-one basis. You can explain something in a way, you understand where they're coming from, or you try to understand where they're coming from, and put it in a context that will work in some way for them. But that's impossible to do in a large group in a 1 hour teaching or something. You're not going to be able to get everybody on board in that way. You can do that individually and you can, and as I'm assuming, as you went to different people, you knew different things about them, and you knew the kinds of things that you could say that would sort of make them receptive to donating money.
Well, I think my only point is that I think you try. That's the only point.
Right.
Instead of not saying anything, and I would agree, maybe saying not anything is the best solution under certain conditions. But you try to impart the wisdom, the knowledge, the beliefs, the philosophies that you have, not ask people to swallow them and internalize them and practice them, but this is what we do in education, right? We try to educate people about everything that might exist and
Right.
might be important for them to know about. So I'm just
All right, it's a little bit like apples and oranges because we live in a completely different time than, 3rd century BCE. There was no mass communication. People weren't exposed to all different kinds of views. You're dealing with people who have a set view of how things are and how life exists. And so there were only 14 instances out of 84 teachings that the Buddha remained silent. And that's because the particular group he was dealing with, and we don't know how large that group was, were so fixed in their view that they would misinterpret anything he said to make sense with their view of things.
And I think Brian's job would be easier if the receptor is willing to learn, I guess, as a first step. That's why they say, we call it dharma or philosophy, whatever. The receptor has to step forward first, take the first step to listen to you, rather than, like Brian said, trying to go force the Buddhism or philosophy or concept to somebody. That totally repels. To a Christian talking about Buddha, it's going to repel. But somebody from Christianity understanding everything, looking for answer, taking the first step, and will say, okay, I want to hear Buddha. I think that would be the first trigger, and then it'll be easier. Brian's job would be easier, but I would filter that first.
I think any of us, we're only willing to learn.
And like Brian said, you give whatever you have, but it's the receptor's job to take it or not take it, and then you let go. And then the next step would be, if he comes and asks you, okay, more question, then Brian would be going step by step by step. So I think receptor has a lot to do in this case, rather than we trying to figure out how to get the message to them.
Yeah, I think as the receptor, the only way a receptor or any of us are willing to learn something is if we think there's some advantage for us in learning something. So when you're going to people, just in your case of fundraising, there must have been at some point, there was an advantage for them to give the money. Otherwise, they wouldn't have.
I'm not saying I convinced everybody, believe me.
But those who did, who were open to it, when we're open to something new, if we think there's an advantage.
If I stand up before a classroom of students, I have no idea what their beliefs are. I have no idea what their interests are. I have no idea, and I have to give them a set of facts. Now I have to force them to learn those facts because they have to regurgitate them to get a grade in the course, and that maybe is the way to do it. But if I don't know the answer, I say I don't know, but then I go and try to find out what the answer would be and come back and say, well, this is what the answer was to your question. So I continue to try to impart that knowledge to them. And I do teach them what I believe is correct information. I just think that maybe I need to do more research on
Well,
this. I don't know what those 14 questions are. So
You need to turn into Buddha.
The questions are posted, but
If you look,
I really
yeah,
invite us all to imagine that there's a valid reason that is beyond our current understanding. And that, if we are going to take refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha,
yeah.
and
And on that,
question
it
the
is.
research.
We're 10 minutes over, so could you do closing
I
first?
was thinking maybe Brian should do our closing.
for you.
Well, we don't even have.
It's just a dedication.
Yeah.
How would you dedicate this session?
Oh my God, Brian, she put you on the spot.
Where's your cheat sheet?
I didn't put him out. I ran out.
Okay, never mind, but I'm here. I'm gonna dedicate. All right, just close your eyes. We're gonna do the closed eyes. Close your eyes and recall the purpose for your attending today's class. And in your purpose, look for your desire to understand the way things actually exist. Find in there your wish to understand reality. And see if anything you heard in class today might help lead you towards a more accurate understanding of reality. To recall something you heard or thought. And now, may our view of reality born in this class today, and those understandings not yet born, may those have no decline. May whatever flash of insight that we may have tickled the edges of our minds, may those flashes arise in us more strongly. And may we remember every day to examine the nature of reality. May we refrain from going on to autopilot when we walk out into our life. May this little seed of understanding reality arise, grow, never cease, and eventually become the seeds for our attainment of a fully enlightened Buddha.
For the benefit of all beings. Okie dokie. Wow, good conversations.
Man, hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
All of the dedications you need to do.
Thank you,
Around your own.
everybody on Zoom, for joining us.
Well, here comes.
I was falling asleep. It was rude. Thank you.
Someone else.
That's great. I'm glad I could be to save your life.
Hi, thank you. Kavita, I'll call you later in a couple hours.
Okay.
That good?
Spiritual life-saving efforts.
Okay.
All right,
My mom,
you're okay.
okay, all right. I'm gonna stop recording. Good.